All right, I'm going to talk about long-term love, whether that's marriage or just cohabitation. So, I've been in my relationship for 17 years, and we just got married about 9 months ago. I'll talk about why in another video. During the part of our relationship before we got married, around the 8 to 10 year mark, we went into a bit of a slump. It's very common. I see it in other couples too. My parents went through it. I'm convinced every couple does. The reason that this occurred in my relationship is because we had become so focused on things that were outside of our relationship, outside of each other, that really had nothing to do with each other. We had lost touch in spite of living in the same house and sharing a bed every night and having a fair bit in common. We had just moved out of a home that we shared with a roommate who was still a best friend of ours. We lived with him for several years before moving out on our own. Moving out of a home where you had roommates is kind of like moving out of the home you had with your parents again, only you're a bit older and you have a greater sense of what you need to get by. Moving out in our case removed a buffer. Our roommate was there for us. We hung out virtually every night. We'd watch movies, TV, laugh, play games, all that fun stuff. When my partner and I moved out, we moved far away from our network, from the people that we used to spend a lot of time with. So it was just us in a little town that we had no roots in and nothing in common with. We moved to that town because I was going to school nearby to finish my music degree. He was working on his own entrepreneurial things. And so that's what we did. We each immersed ourselves in our individual things, and we just kind of stopped talking to each other. When I look back on the details, I remember we had this little plastic love seat that was not very comfortable. The finish was really plasticky. It stuck to skin. It was not a legit love seat. And so we had this couch and we had this easy chair. And every night in our house, we would sit on the couch, or he would sit on the couch, and I would sit in the easy chair. And we would sit next to each other, but really we were far away from each other. We were not in a lot of physical contact on those evenings in front of the TV. We'd spend all day apart doing our individual things, spending a lot of time in our vehicles alone. We did not make the time to text each other to check in or chat. We just didn't. Tunnel vision. So for between, I want to say 2016 and 2019, we sort of lost touch in spite of the fact that we were working together to make sure we still had our bills paid, make sure we still had food, make sure we still had our house clean. You know, we were doing the basic things, but we weren't doing them as though we were loving partners, even though we did and do love each other very much. Throughout this time of disconnect, we were, of course, feeling unheard. Both of us felt unheard about things that we needed to be heard about. You need to hear your spouse. That's marriage. So we argued more intensely, or we often would just not even talk at all. And then I finished school, and within a very short time of my finishing school, we hightailed it back to the town that we had left. We settled back into a house here. We were now closer to our network, and we got a bigger, softer couch with big pillows and fluffy blankets. That was our first step. Then we just kind of looked at each other and acknowledged that we had been out of touch. We'd held each other's hands and we looked in each other's eyes and said, I haven't talked to you in so long. So I also went to counseling on my own because I realized that I was struggling to communicate what I needed to communicate. I was always kind of projecting that out and saying things like, you never listen to me. Why don't you ever listen to me? You don't even hear what I have to say. And I didn't really think about whether or not I was hearing what I needed to say inside of myself. So I went to counseling to talk that out because that's a me problem. And it becomes an us problem if I don't take care of it because it's a me problem first. All of your me problems will become us problems if you don't handle your shit. You can externalize all you want, but they won't go away. And so I went to counseling and I stayed to work it out. And over time, I found myself more clearly able to say things that I needed to say. So if I'm in a situation where I'm crying on the couch, I'll still find myself saying things like, I'm expressing a need for co-regulation. I'm expressing a need right now for you to touch and comfort me. And he will do that. He began to feel more comfortable telling me the things that he needed to tell me. And then the pandemic happened. That level of togetherness forced us to look at ourselves and each other. I was still doing my primary job. I was a teacher and I just began teaching on the internet. I was teaching my music students online instead of teaching them out of a studio or three. I'd been teaching at 3 studios pre-pandemic. It's wild to remember how I was never home pre-pandemic. That's also part of the issue. It became easier to stay in touch with my partner because I didn't have a student for half an hour. I could just go into the living room and hang out. We'd watch a classic episode of The Simpsons and laugh together on the couch for half an hour between students. And then I would go back and teach my kids. Through this time of learning how to communicate with myself inside and turning around that negative self-talk, I was more able to clearly say what I mean to my partner. And he very patiently worked through what he needed to say to me and was able to learn to communicate those things to me. And so now our relationship is so much deeper. We've just fallen so much more in love with each other. We text each other every day. He's developed his passion for fishing into his own business, and I've become fully self-employed as a music teacher and as a working, gigging musician and artist. When we tell each other we're proud of each other, that's something that we didn't really do before. All of this, plus some other adjustments that we made, I'll talk about those in another video, are what made the difference between a slump and a split. So that's what I'm here to tell you. When it comes to keeping your marriage strong, yes, flirt with each other, send each other the cute texts and the selfies, do the flowers and the dinner and the candles and the dating, absolutely. That part's vital too. But during the mundane times, ask yourself, what can I do to foster closeness with my partner? What do they need to feel heard and understood? Make sure that you're not just doing what you want to do, what you think you would need. What do they need? That's all I got for you. Stay in touch. All the best.